The humidity, it hangs heavy, a velveteen valance weakly holding back, separating the crowd from God's main attraction. Such a fleshy heat weighing one down like a fresh, tepid meat on a platter, wet, warm, almost wiggling, slippery and slithering, smothering. An anaconda of aqueous anxiety that squeezes a man into that half-world between life and death. Reflected in a diffuse, cloud-filtered light, staining the single glassy fenestration across the front of this wood-framed, one-room emporium, filling in the flaking, fading red window paint that spells out in broad, mid-50s cursive style, corner grocery. Big plate glass windows splattered with splotches of butcher paper lettered with black magic marker. Mr. Nixon price controls invoked. Ham hocks 29 cents a pound. Hot links 4 for $1. Pork and beans 32 cents for a 16-ounce can. It's 1971. But Cousin Bobby's 396 SS Impala parked out front where he can see it from his perch behind the register. That Impala, she's a 66. Dark blue, black vinyl top. A Confederate flag folded neatly across the back window bay, a bumper sticker declaring the driver American by birth, Southern by the grace of God. Pete and Hard Rock out front sitting on the wide lip of the concrete foundation of the store, cigarettes dangling from fingers or lips in a syncopated motion as if choreographed by June Taylor herself. Watch from above through some heavenly ceiling can. An occasional phlegmy cough heaving up some slime from down deep, a gathering goo twixt the gum and cheek, a whooshing spit out upon the broken concrete, patched with bucket tar and gravel. Must be jelly, 'cause jam, it don't shake that way. Conversation and phrases and short-liners, questions and declarations of their respective manhoods, grins and grimaces. Their ambitions as vague and cloudy and weighing on them as the summer sultriness, their hunger focused instead on the moment. They are nothing now but two pairs of eyes watching the young Pentecostal lass, seemingly ignorant of her blooming womanhood, but possessing, demonstrating a hormonally driven swish of her ass, lifting her long cotton skirt, showing off pale calves, long and lean. Budding breast that not even her loose Mennonitish blouse can hide. Teasing suspicions that she is near ready to be married off to one of the congregation elders. Those legs meant for wrapping around her virile, God-fearing man for the purpose of breeding and birthing bunches of babies, all sorts of Jesus-loving babies. Pete and Hard Rock, they'll never be that man, but their eyes, they don't know that as they watch her cross the road. On over to the white church, her white church, that shimmers and winks in some fiery field of sanity in the soggy sorghum of the late August afternoon. Early evening settling in, setting up shop, making its presence known. The dim light of the late afternoon, early evening August sun, who? He, she, the sun. That transsexual Transylvanian she-male Apollo with a cunt and a cock, soaring home in her chariot, a blaze of fire, scorching earth. He, she plays havoc with the raindrops, tickling and teasing. These liquidous tears of a clown still resting uneasily on the blades of grass, gathered within its conspiratorial congress, cluster-fucked and spent on the expansive front and side lawns, rain that had fallen quickly, softly, predictably to ground, to earth, in its same bat time, same bat channel, regularly scheduled afternoon appearance. Just an hour or so earlier, the pavement already dry. Mickey, he comes out of the store as Pentecostal Peggy crosses the street. Pete and Hard Rock, they look up and over at him. Mickey, he nods. Pete and Hard Rock, they nod. Hard Rock, he says, "Hey, what's up, cuz?" Every white man is his cuz. Mickey, he sits beside them. He has 3 Coca-Colas in the bottle. He lets Pete and Hard Rock each pick one. They each hold up the bottle. Check out the bottler location, town, city, state, stamped on the bottom. Pete, he says, I got Columbus. Hard Rock, he says, Birmingham. Mickey, he says, I got Charleston. I win. Hard Rock, he says, you sure Birmingham ain't further away? Mickey, he says, looking down at the broken concrete on the drive, noticing the ants that had gathered about one of the snotty spits laid down before Mickey, he says, I'm sure. Hard Rock, he shakes his head. He says, taking his draw off his cigarette, he says, don't know how you know them things. Pete, he nudges Hard Rock in the ribs. He says with a laugh, it ain't what he know, it's what you don't know, ignorant cracker. Hard Rock, he says, yeah, figures. Mickey, he holds out his hand. Pete and Hard Rock, they each give him 50 cents. Mickey watches Sweet Skirt saunter across the road, walking across between a few meandering people, doggedly walking, they, the civilians, these non-soldiers of sweet innocence, small groups of men getting off work at the pulp mill. The pulp mill right up and around the bend that follows, that consists of a single railroad track and a barely 2-lane tar and gravel road. These folks, men folks mostly, they saunter slowly in one direction, while other folks, mostly women folk, walking in ones, twos, come up from the other direction, all hunched over, still carrying the rain in their shoes, perhaps still feeling the work, caring for them white folks' households on the other side of town. Mickey, though, he don't know. Mickey, he don't know how they feel, what they feel. He can only guess. He can only reach into his own world formed by his teachers, television, the Albany Herald and the Columbus Ledger Inquirer, and Archie Comics and Sergeant Rock, and living on what he has been told is the right side of the tracks. He can only reach into this world, his world, and try to figure out some sort of 13-year-old opinion, some worldview, some rational framework into which he can stuff all that he sees. A delicately constructed set of monkey bars built of tinker toys and rubber bands, beneath which lie broken glass and broken promises. And here they come off like they do every evening, end of day, these wandering Jews of Africa, they pass by a pecan tree that towers above, who guards the front corner of the church's side lawn, Jesus the sentinel. The Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, scars in the palms of her branches, and their sweet virgin, she skirts around, passes by the tree and the few older kids that hang out in the large shadow, cast by the long day's clothes. A few kids leaning on the fat pecan trunk, cigarettes dangling between thumb and forefinger, wrist relaxed, forearm resting on uplifted knee, mostly in dirty t-shirts, some in overalls, some just in jeans, some in brogan boots, some not, some barefooted, some with long, stringy redneck hair, some with that total cracker buzz. Mickey, he don't know them, didn't grow up with them, don't really know them, but he recognizes them from previous summers. He's known them long enough to know they'll grow up and die just like those before them. Maybe they'll move on to some other town. Maybe they'll knock up their girlfriend, end up marrying because it's the right thing to do. It's what they know to do. Maybe they'll sell a little dope, a little crank, get caught. They always get caught. Do a little time in jail. Maybe they'll end up driving their car, their truck into some ditch, into each other, into the river, the lake. Maybe they'll survive. Maybe they won't. But Mickey, he's only here for the summer, been here for most summers, as long as he can remember. That's what they do. That's what he and his mama and his brother do. They come down here for the summer. Mickey, his grandmama, she lives here. Mickey, his aunts and uncles, they live here. Mickey, his daddy, he took Mickey's mama and moved them all over up into Virginia. Mickey's mama and her family, they never forgave him. Now, during the summers, they come back, Mickey and his mom and his brother, they come back down to South Georgia at Cuthbert, and Mickey, he works, helps out at his Uncle Daniel's store, been doing it since he could count change. Cousin Bobby, 4 years his senior, runs the store, been running the store since he could count change. Bobby, he knows these guys. Bobby, he knows most everyone in Cuthbert. Most everyone they know. Bobby, he doesn't really seem to care about these kids over beneath the pecan tree. He don't care if they exist or not. Bobby, he puts on such ways. And it's Thursday, sweet skirt. She walks up around toward the back of the church, around to the church office. She disappears into the sandy back lot where the preacher, he parks his car, surrounds himself with the pines and kudzu that trap their collective souls. There ain't no services tonight. They don't do church on Thursdays. They do church on Wednesday. They do church on Sunday morning, on Sunday evening. On Wednesday evening during camp revival time, they do church every night for a couple of weeks. Visiting preachers coming in from all over, taking their dinners with the families of various deacons and important folk within the congregation. Mickey ain't never had a visiting preacher take dinner with them, or he ain't never seen a visiting preacher take with Uncle Dan'l or with his grandmama either. Mickey, he knows that during the other months, the church choir, they practice on Thursdays, right after dinner, usually, but they don't practice in August. Ain't nobody around to sing in August. The preacher and the deacons and the important folk within the congregation, they usually run these kids off by the time services or choir practice are going to begin. Sometimes they call the sheriff, who happens to live right up the street, not following the bend, but around the other way, toward town. Usually they just walk up to them, ask them if they have accepted Jesus into their lives, pointedly comparing their loathsome ways and those of Satan and his kind and his like and his sort. But this Thursday evening in August, the preacher, the deacons, the important folk within the congregation, hell, most of the congregation themselves, they deem it time to be off shelling peas in their aluminum lawn chairs on the front porch. In the front lawn, on their neighbor's front porch, front lawn picking over the last of watermelons in the field, fishing for breakfast, brimming the local ponds. Maybe even sipping a little bourbon and branch or scuppernong wine. Not so much that they'd give in to the devil's ways, just enough to take away the edge, that edge of the suffocating heat. The heat that swirls about like the flies and gnats and mosquitoes that it breeds, infecting pores and glands, causing even the dry dirt and the gravel drive leaving from the road to the church parking lot to break a sweat. Most of the time, most of these August evenings, these boys of summer, Mickey and Hard Rock and Pete and the other Bobby Rats sit inside the store behind the counter, around the counter on the drink box, the window unit blowing cool air across the floor every now and then. Every once in a while, they're joined by some of the wandering folks. They come traipsing in, stand in front of the icy airflow, sometimes even lifting their sweat-stained shirts, grinning from ear to ear, taking away the breeze, not caring. Mickey, he don't blame them. Bobby, he blames them. He leans over the counter, flash water in hand. He leans forward, cocking his head, and just that way he does. He says, "Now, Mr. Henry, you're going to stink up the whole damn place lifting your old smelly shirt that way. Now, you get on out of here." Or he says, "Mr. Charlie, if you don't turn away from that damned air conditioner, face me, and pay down your damned account for this month, I'm going to throw your sorry ass out of here." Mr. Charlie, Mr. Henry, they must be 20 years older than Bobby. It don't matter. They're black. Bobby, he ain't. So they, Mr. Charlie, Mr. Henry, they almost always do whatever it is that Bobby tells them. Just the way it is, just the way it seems to have always been. That 60s shit, that peace-loving tie-dye, that black power shit, it ain't hit Cuthbert, Georgia. It's only 71. It ain't no matter. And they, Mr. Charlie, Mr. Henry, the others, it ain't no matter that they are confused, as they often are. They are confused as to where Bobby's thin but ever-changing line of rules might lie. They almost always do what Bobby tells them. They buy something, pay a little on their tab, make some vague, mumbling, face-saving remark, then leave the store. They leave and another 2, 3 take their place. The store never, rarely, ever gets crowded, but never, rarely, ever empties out either. This afternoon evening, this Thursday evening time, Henry, he comes in. Whiskey and cigarettes precede him by a few seconds as he passes by Pete, Hard Rock, Mickey. He walks past up the steps through the swinging door. The door swings open and shut, back and forth, swinging open and shut and open in diminishing apertures. The humid outside air sucked in through the straw. The door settling down, closed. Henry, he goes in, a cigarette perched behind his ear, poking out from behind his thick black curly hair, his white boy afro that bounces like the slow waves of a waterbed during a morning fog. Henry, he walks in, his 16 years providing him with a white chocolate body, not the normal farm boy cracker muscle that normally comes covered with a not-so-thin layer of his mama's biscuits, eggs, ham, bacon, every morning. No, Henry, he's got that field hand thing going on, sinewy and thick from long hours of hard labor. Henry, that boy, he can swing a pick, he can slip a spade into hard clay. Hard Rock, that little fuck of 14 with the appearance, intelligence of someone 12, he gets up and follows him in. Mickey, he gets up and follows him in. Pete, he sits outside smoking a cigarette. Bobby, he sits behind the counter, chair tilted back on his hind two legs. Local evening paper, the Albany Herald folded over in his lap. He looks up and gives a nod, looks back down at his paper. Hard Rock, he says, he got his country boy pimp swaggered down. He says, pointing at the top of a bottle, poking out of Henry's back pocket. Hey, cuz, where'd you get the whiskey? Henry, he looks down on Hard Rock. A little bit of a cracker crumb. Henry, he says, your mama gave it to me. Hard Rock, he says, he gets upset so easily. He says, oh, now, don't be talking about my mama. You know she's sick. Henry, he grins. He leans over the ice cream freezer, slides up the glass lid, moves things around to get a better look. He says, yeah, thought she was moving a little slow this time. Hard Rock, he turns red. He says, where'd you get the whiskey? Henry says, over at Eufaula. The truck stopped off at the ABC. I got one of the old niggers to buy me a half pint. Where are those Eskimo pies? Hard Rock, he says, he sidles up to the counter of the ice cream freezer. He says, ain't there any left? Henry, he says, looking over at Hard Rock with that look, that sideways look, he says, that's what I'm asking you. That's what I want to know. Where's the Eskimo pies? Hard Rock, he says, don't know, fool. Any whiskey left? Henry, he looks up, grins, he says, nope. He says, looks back down into the freezer, moving some things about. He says, nope. Took off the top, threw it out the window on the ride back. We got stuck behind an old nigger church bus coming up off the river on those damn curves. Took us forever getting home. I nearly sucked all the fumes out of the bottle. Hard Rock. He stretches his cheap t-shirt that proclaims attendance to some Alice Cooper concert up in Atlanta. He stretches his t-shirt, rising up with his skinny arms, exposing a large purplish birthmark around his navel. Mickey's Uncle Daniel, Bobby's daddy, he always says about Hard Rock, he says, shit, boy, only difference between you and that fucking nigger over there is you white. Know that, boy? Hard Rock, he'll sniff. He'll say, yes, sir, Mr. Daniel. But this time, Uncle Daniel, he ain't there. It's just Bobby. It's just Mickey. It's just Henry. It's just Hard Rock. And the other niggers that come and go. And Hard Rock, he says to Henry, looking out through the glass doors, he says over his shoulder to Henry, he says, hey, Henry, ain't that old sorry Jerry Johnson over there, ain't he still owing you money? Henry, he says, finding his Eskimo pie, pulling it out, shaking the frost off the paper-wrapped frozen dessert, sliding the freezer door back down, he says, where? Hard Rock, he says, over yonder, hanging on the tree with them other crackers. Ain't that him? Henry, he squints, he leans and squints, he slides the freezer lid back open, he tosses in the Eskimo pie, he points at it while he looks at the others, a reminder that it's his for when he returns. He slides the lid back shut, he turns and strolls out the door. He don't say nothing. Mickey, he turns and looks at his cousin Bobby. His cousin Bobby lets the chair come back down to the floor. He folds the paper, taking his time. He stands up. He walks around the counter. Hard Rock, he follows Henry out, flinging the door open wide. Bobby, he steps outside through the swinging door, timing it on the second swingaroo. Mickey, he follows Bobby, having to catch the door as it swings back at him. Henry, he casually strolls across the little corner store drive, stepping around the old-fashioned gas pumps, tall, rectangular, with a flat, round disc, decorated, embossed on either side against a pearly white background. The green dinosaur standing beneath a big, bold, and red Sinclair. So 60s, transcending, shriveling into early 70s. Lift the nozzle and hose, turn the crank till the numbers click and flip, white numbers stamped onto little metal tabs, click and flip through the back down to 0, leaded gas through straight metal pipes, right on down into the tank. The gurgling, glug floats up. Fumes float up in a visible haze, a couple of fill-ups, and even a big boy is buzzed. Huffer training for future PCP punks. And Henry, he's pumped his share of gas. He's strolling on across the tar and gravel road. He's almost floating in the casualness of his pace. Hands in his pocket, leaning back just a little bit, in that let's boogie sort of way. Pete, he stands up, drops his cigarette, steps on it, crushes it out with the toe of his Brogan, pulls the Marlboro Red in a box out of his back jeans pocket, taps the box 3 times, and only 3 times. Takes out a fag, does the slow-mo movement to the lips as he gazes off across into the distance. Marlboro Man, cool, watching Henry cross the road. In Hard Rock, he walks over to and leans against one of the gas pumps, and Bobby, he steps on the and stops right there on the steps, right outside the door. Mickey, he stops, stands next to Bobby, looking up at Bobby, who is looking across beyond Henry to the group of kids hanging beneath the tree. Mickey, he looks up at Bobby, he follows his gaze. These kids are standing there around smoking a joint, passing it around. Mickey, he can't hear them, he just sees them. One of them motioning to the other, his hand out, waiting for the pass, impatiently. And Henry, he walks right up with a, hey, it's all cool, arms out, greeting them. The kids, they notice him walking up. The kid with the joint, he turns, he recognizes Henry. Everyone knows Henry. He makes them an offering of the weed. Henry, he's 2 years older than these kids. He's just 16, but he's a man. God damn, through and through. Works like a man. He works over at the pulp mill now, down the road, dropped out of school, went to work. He walks right up, all casual, like, oh, hey, it's cool. Walks up past the guy offering, walks up to the wanting one, grabs the guy, grabs both straps of his overalls with one big fucking Henry hand, pulls the 2 straps together like they were a collar around the horrified teen throat. Henry, he holds him up by the one hand, with the other, hauls off and punches him. Fucking jacks him up right in the face. The kid loses his footing, collapses. Henry, he holds the boy up, his newfound collar, then lets him drop. The boy, he falls down, holding his nose, blood pouring out through his fingers. Henry, he leans over. He says in a voice so soft, so southern, so Crackertown Wigger, he says, you owe me money, cocksucker. They, Mickey, Bobby, Pete, Hard Rock, all the way across the street, they can't hear him, but they know what he's saying. They can read the slow, deliberate movement of his lips. Henry, he reaches into the boy's pockets. He pulls out a bag of weed. He tucks the bag into his own pocket. He says, you still owe me money, asshole. Henry picks the boy up by the overall straps again, holds him steady, hits him again, fucking punches him right in the face again, drops him, lets him fall. Fuck. Mickey, he looks up at Bobby, he says, kind of panicked, he says, you gonna do something? Bobby, he looks down at Mickey, he says, shaking his head, he says, ain't nothing to do. That's Henry's business. Mickey, he says, you ain't gonna do nothing? Bobby, he just shakes his head, watches. Henry, he picks the boy up one more time. He says, giving him a little shake, you owe me money, cocksucker. He hits him again, lets him fall, turns and walks back across the street, past Hard Rock and the pumps, walks over to the store. He struts, he says, looking around at Pete and Mickey and Bobby, he says, "Hey, what's up, cuz?" Bobby, he laughs. He looks at Mickey and Mickey, he looks over at Henry, he laughs, but not a Bobby laugh, just a little guess he better laugh. He's 13, Bobby, he's 17. Henry, he's 16. Bobby, he holds out his hand. Henry, he gives him the bag of weed. Bobby, he looks at Mickey, and Mickey, he looks back at Bobby. Mickey looks over at Henry. Henry, he's all a-grinning, and Mickey, he looks over at Hard Rock, who is looking over at the kid rolling on the grass, blood all over his face, his hands, his t-shirt, his overalls. The grass, the other kids just sort of standing around, him looking down at him, looking back over their shoulders over at Henry, making sure, hoping he ain't coming back for more. Bobby, he turns around and goes inside the store. Henry, he follows him on in, stops at the ice cream freezer, takes out his Eskimo pie, reaches into his pocket. Bobby, he raises his hand. He says, "Nah, it's all right." Henry, he nods, opens the Eskimo pie, takes a big bite. Mickey, he looks in through the still swinging doors. Fwap, fwap, fwap. Slow, slower, still, stop. Hot August night, and all that.